My husband slapped me for his mother's fall and told me to leave. I left, turning off my phone, throwing his family into chaos. My name is Linue. I'm 32 years old. It all happened the night of my mother-in-law's 60th birthday party. My husband slapped me right across the face. He told me to get out in front of 20 relatives. I left, and my salary went from 0 to 30,000. Later on, I even started my own company. That home where I had a Neil, it fell apart. It started with my mother-in-law's 60th birthday. From 4 a.m. until 7 p.m., I was alone in the kitchen, cooking 12 dishes. Grease smoke blinded me, sweat soaked my neck. The back of my blouse was soaked dried, then soaked again. My phone in my apron pocket kept ringing. It was my old colleague from the hotel days, Sister Lynn. She asked if I could cover a last-minute shift for her. She had a client in a real bind. I said I couldn't today. It's my mother-in-law's birthday. Sister Lynn sighed. Linue, I told you you'd regret it. When you quit back then, I told you you'd regret it. Your mother-in-law's 60th, and you're cooking 12 dishes alone. What are you even worth in that house? I didn't say anything. Hung up and went back to stirring the braised ribs. The living room was packed with people. My mother-in-law sat regally in a bright red cheongsam. Around her neck was the pearl necklace I'd saved for. The pearl necklace I bought. My sister-in-law, Chun Min, sat beside her. Her new acrylic nails glittered under the lights. Carrying the sea cucumber soup, my legs were shaking. My mother-in-law took a sip. She threw the spoon. The sea cucumber isn't plump enough. The broth is off. So cheap. Can't even spend money properly. My sister-in-law chimed in. That's just how she is, Mom. You just have to make do. After all, not everyone has the standards of our Wong family. I looked at my husband, Chun Hao. He was busy pouring wine for his uncle and didn't even glance up. All 12 dishes were picked apart. The fish was overcooked. The shrimp was rubbery. There wasn't enough oil in the greens. The relatives echoed her. Some glanced at me. The look in their eyes was like they were looking at a free maid. I stood there, refilling tea and pouring wine, not saying a word. When my mother-in-law stood up to give a toast, her foot slipped. I was closest. I instinctively rushed forward to catch her. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. We both fell to the floor. A wine glass shattered. Red wine splashed on my white dress like a stain of blood. Chun Hao rushed over and roughly yanked me away. He threw me so hard, I went flying sideways. My knee hit the coffee table. What are you doing? He yelled. You pushed my mom. I didn't. I was just trying to help her. The slap hit my right cheek, and it burned like fire. My ears were ringing, and everything went black for a few seconds. When I came to, the whole living room was dead silent. Chun Hao was standing right in front of me, pointing at the door, veins bulging in his neck, shouting, "Get out of this house!" His mom was still on the floor. His sister was helping her up while glaring back at me. If anything happens to my mom, you're gonna pay. I held my face and stood up. Over 20 pairs of eyes were on me. Some were whispering, others just shaking their heads. Not a single person spoke. I turned and walked toward the bedroom, grabbed my phone and my wallet. Chun Hao yelled from behind. Oh, so you got guts now, huh? You hurt my mom? Apologize now. I didn't look back. As the elevator doors closed, the tears finally fell. I walked out of the complex gates. Old John, the security guard, saw my swollen face. Mrs. Wong, what happened? It's nothing, I said. I just fell. Then I walked into the night. My phone rang. It was his sister, Chun Min. She said, Linue, you're dead. Mom hurt her back in a fall. She's at the hospital now. Just you wait. This isn't over. I hung up. Turned the phone off. That night, I checked into a cheap motel by the street. The room was musty. The sheets were stiff. On the pillow, there was a cigarette burn mark left by God knows which guest. I sat on the edge of the bed, looking at the woman in the mirror. Hair a mess, half her face swollen, eyes red as a rabbit's. Is this Linue? Is this Linue from the company gala 5 years ago, wearing a burgundy evening gown, holding the Manager of the Year trophy? My phone screen lit up. A text from Chun Hao. Take care of my mom, or we're getting a divorce. I threw the phone aside. I didn't sleep that night. I counted the cracks in the ceiling, from 1 to over 100, then started all over again. The neon lights outside flickered, and I suddenly remembered. 5 years ago, Chun Hao proposed outside my office. A rainy night. He knelt on one knee in the wet street, his white shirt soaked through, clinging to him. He said, Linue, I don't want to drop you off home every night, then leave alone. I want to be the reason you come home. I believed him. The first 6 months of marriage were sweet. Then his mother moved in. Chunhao held me and said, my mom's had it rough. Dad left us early. She raised me and Chunming all by herself. Just try to be more patient, okay? I tried. For 4 years. I went from a hotel manager to a full-time housewife. From a career woman making over 10 grand a month to a woman with no income in my husband's eyes. I would make it if his mom said it was too bland or too salty. If she said the clothes I bought were too expensive, I returned them. She said a woman making a scene outside was improper, so I deleted all my old contacts. My sister-in-law would kick off her shoes by the door every visit, toss her clothes on the sofa, never lifted a finger to clean up. She called me sis, but it sounded like she was summoning the maid. And Chunhao, he came home later and later, talked to me less and less. Well, he did open his mouth. It was either an order or a criticism. Last year on my birthday, I cooked a whole feast. Waited. The candles burned down to nothing. He finally stumbled in, reeking of booze. Forgot. Had to work late. Our anniversary. His mom and sister watched old videos later, laughing so loud. I was in the kitchen, doing the dishes. No one called me to join. I told myself, this is marriage. Endure. But when that slap landed, I just didn't want it anymore. I stayed in that cheap motel for 3 days. My phone had over 200 missed calls, most from Chunhao and Chunming. A few were from his mom, using a neighbor's phone. They called me an ungrateful B****ch. Said I had no heart. Said I was the reason his mom was in the hospital. Said I wasn't good enough for the Chun family name. There was one text from Chunhao. Anyway, last chance. Be at the hospital by noon or divorce. I didn't reply. I blocked every single one of their numbers. On the third morning, I called Ling Jie. Ling Jie used to work under me. Later, she started her own domestic service company. She'd asked if I wanted part-time work. I always said no, because his mom said working as a maid would shame the Wong family. That day I said, Ling Jie, you still hiring? She didn't ask. Just said, yeah, urgent. Richland Gardens, Mrs. Chen's place. Need someone who can do Western food and handle kids. 800 a day. You in? I said yes. The taxi got stopped at the gate. The security guard stared me down. Which resident are you visiting? I said, the Chun residence. It's one of the city's most expensive neighborhoods. The cab was stopped at the gate. The security guard stared at me. Asked where I was visiting. I said Mrs. Chen's house. He checked the list, giving me another once-over. I knew that look. My black suit was 5 seasons out of date. The makeup couldn't hide the swelling that still hadn't gone down. I told him I was here for the housekeeper interview. Villa more immense than imagined. Outside, a swimming pool. The facial recognition at the door lit up automatically. A woman's voice came through the intercom. Come in. The door opened. Mrs. Chun, maybe 50. Chanel suit, pearl earrings. Her gaze swept over me. It lingered for a second on my right cheek. She said, Jean Yali, Lin Jie's referral? I nodded yes. She didn't ask about my face. Just said, come in. The living room was like a gallery. A grand piano. Walls covered in oil paintings. The air smelled of lemon and cedar. Mrs. Chun gestured for me to sit. Lin Jie said you did hotel management. Your English is good, and you have nursing experience. I said yes. I was the FB supervisor at the Intercontinental for 3 years. TM, 8 English. I later took care of a sick, elderly relative. I didn't say it was my mother-in-law. Mrs. Chun said, my husband is an executive at a multinational. Next week, I'm accompanying him to Europe for a month. We have 2 children. One is 8. And my mother had a mild stroke. She needs professional care. $30,000 a month. Room and board included. Hours are 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. 2-hour break midday. 2 days off a month. Can you do it? 30,000. That was twice what Chunhao made. I heard myself say yes. Mrs. Chun raised an eyebrow. You're not asking about the duties? The details of the package? That price, high standards required. I just need to prove I deserve it. She studied me for a few seconds. Kitchen stocked. In half an hour. I'm heading out. Make me a dessert. Let's see what you've got. I walked into that kitchen. 6-burner range. Built-in oven. A whole wall of spices. The fridge was stocked with steaks, seafood. I rolled up my sleeves. Mixed the dough, made the filling, baked it. 20 minutes later, I placed a lemon tart in front of her. Golden crust. Lemon filling translucent, mint garnish. Mrs. Chin took a bite. Paused. Took another. Look cordon bleu? She asked. A short course. Years ago, I said. She put down her fork. The mark. Your husband? I stayed silent. She said my first husband had hands too. Then she stood up. Come with me. Let's sign the contract. I followed her into the study. My hands were shaking. I read every clause of the contract. 30,000 a month. Room, board, quarters, duties clear. Mrs. Chun says your English is excellent. You can tutor the children. Skilled in elderly care, cooking pro. Someone like you is hard to find. I'm paying a professional's rate. I signed my name on the last page. Linue. The same two characters. The same name I signed on the marriage certificate 3 years ago. It's the same name, but it's not the same person anymore. My room is downstairs. French doors open to a small garden. The sheets are brand new Egyptian cotton. A work laptop sits on the desk. This nanny's quarters are more comfortable than the master bedroom I shared with Chun Hao. Before Mrs. Chun left on her business trip, she briefed me. The elderly lady is Professor Su. Right side weak post-stroke, mind sharp. 2 children. The older sister, Lulu, is 8. Her little brother, Tian Tian, is 5. For the 3 days she's away, I'm in full charge of the household. I didn't expect. The first one to accept me would be the old lady, Professor Su. Her hair silver white, sitting in her wheelchair. Her first words to me were in English. Good morning. The new girl. I paused, then replied in English. Good morning. Professor Su, I'm Linue. You can call me Xiao Zhang. She smiled. Your English is quite standard. Do you speak German? I said I took some classes in college, but I've mostly forgotten. She said, no matter. Let's speak French. That morning, we chatted in French for an hour. From the weather to Kandinsky's paintings. She quizzed me on a few words. I answered correctly. She nodded, satisfied. You're not here to be a nanny. You're here to be a governess. I said I could do anything. She asked, can you do rehab exercises? I said I've learned. She extended her arm. Then let's begin. While I was doing Professor Su's physiotherapy, my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered. Shunmin's shrill voice screeched from the other end. Linue, where were you? Mom's in pain, crying. Get to the hospital now. I whispered. I'm at work. Shunmin spat back. Work? What work? You're a housewife. Taking care of people is your work. Caring for my mom versus others. Difference. No pay. She fell silent. Then she exploded, screaming that I was ungrateful, a backstabber, that I'd eaten the Wong family's food, lived under their roof, and now that I had my wings, I was turning my back on them. I hung up. Professor Su looked at me. She didn't ask a thing. Raise hand 5 centimeters more. Yes, perfect. That afternoon, I was packing lunches for the 2 kids. Lulu, 8 years old, watched me warily without saying a word. Tian Tian, 5 years old, leaned on the dining table, watching me cut fruit. He asked if I knew how to make teddy bear cookies. I'll make them tomorrow morning. He grinned. His gap-toothed smile was extra sweet. Lulu still wouldn't talk to me, but he finished every last bite of the blueberry muffin I made. That evening, Mrs. Chun called to check in. I told her everything was fine. The old lady's therapy was done. The kids' homework was helped with. Dinner was all prepped. She said, send me tomorrow's menu. I said, okay. After hanging up, I realized I hadn't stopped for a single moment since 6 a.m., but I didn't feel tired. It was a strange feeling. For the past 5 years, I did far less work daily in my own home. Yet I always felt weighed down, like carrying a sack of rocks. Now, what was I carrying? Nothing. I knew this house wasn't mine. This family wasn't mine. I finished my work and could go back to my own room. Closed the door, peace and quiet. Then my phone rang again. It was Chun Hao, staring at his name, flashing on the screen. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. I answered. He said, Linue, do you have to make such a scene? Mom's back injury flared up. Lily has to work. I can't handle it all alone. Can't you just come back and help? I said, we're getting a divorce. He said, we can talk about the divorce later. Just come home first. I said no, and then I hung up. I slept deeply that night. Not a single dream. Mrs. Chun was away on business for 3 days. In those 3 days, I learned the ins and outs of the Chun household. Professor Su's schedule ran like clockwork. Up at 7 a.m., blood pressure at 7:15, breakfast at 8, rehab at 9. He hated being fed. His right hand wasn't too steady, so I cut his food into easy-to-spear pieces, arranged on the plate. He'd eat slowly himself. He never said it. But on the third morning, when I brought his oatmeal, he said, "You're better than a dozen or so caregivers before you." Lulu still wasn't much of a talker, but every day after school, he'd sneak a glance for his favorite muffin. I noticed he liked blueberry, not cranberry. I wrote it down. Tian had no shyness at all. By the third day, he was following me around asking, "Auntie, do you know how to make chocolate cake? Auntie, can you make a paper boat? Auntie, can you do magic tricks?" I said a little bit and pulled 2 eggs from the fridge. I did a little trick with a springy chopstick for him. He screamed, "Sister Han, come quick." Lulu is standing at the door. There was a hint of a smile on her lips. Very faint, but I saw it. The night Mrs. Chun came back, she tried the chicken soup I'd simmered. She didn't say a word, just finished the whole bowl. The next morning, he said at the breakfast table, "I've got a business dinner next week. 6 guests. Put together a formal Western menu for them. Let me see what you can do." I said, "Okay." Then he added, "Sister Lin called me. Said you used to handle VIP banquet planning at the hotel." I said, "Yes." He put down his chopsticks and looked at me. "Then why did you quit?" I paused. I said, "Because my husband said he could afford to support me." Mrs. Chun didn't ask anymore. That afternoon, I went to the supermarket. In the fresh produce section, I ran into Chun Hao's colleague, Zhao Chong. He was pushing a cart full of frozen dumplings and instant noodles. He was startled when he saw me. "Lin Yu? Is that really you?" I nodded. He looked me up and down. "Hao Dong said you went back to your parents' place. What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm working." He glanced at the steak and foie gras on my cart. "Housekeeping?" I said, "Yes." His expression got a little complicated. "You look well." I gave a slight smile. He said, "Hao Dong's having a rough time lately. Some issues at work. His mom's out of the hospital. No one to take care of her. The house is a complete mess. Lili and Tian are posting rants on social media." I said, "Oh, really?" He waited for me to ask more. I didn't. So he just went on himself. "So, you two are really going through with it?" I said, "We're in the process." His mouth opened and closed. Finally, he just said, "Well, take care of yourself." I said, "Thanks." While I was checking out, I got a text from Chun Hao. A long one. It said, "Lin Yu, I was wrong. I shouldn't have hit you that day. But you weren't exactly right either. You knew how quick-tempered Mom is, and you had to talk back to her. Now her back is hurt. Lily's busy with work. I really can't handle it all alone. Just come back first. Let's make this work. We can talk about the divorce later." I read it. Then I deleted the message. Mrs. Chin's business dinner was a success. All 6 guests, including an executive from a French hospitality group, tried my beef Wellington. He specifically asked Mrs. Chun to have me come to the living room so he could tell me magnificent to my face 3 times. Mrs. Chun had a rare, slight smile on her lips. She said, "There's an industry summit for domestic services next month. You'll come with me." I said, "Thank you, Mrs. Chun." That night, while I was cleaning up the kitchen, Sister Lin called. "Lin Yu, you know what? All hell's breaking loose over at the Wong family." I told him, "Chun Hao's mom, didn't she supposedly have a back injury? Just a minor sprain. Hospitalized for 3 days. She faked a serious injury. Now home, no one to wait on her. Chun Hao's been suspended from work, pending investigation. Chun Min fought with her mother-in-law, stormed back to her parents. Total chaos over there. Chun Hao's been looking everywhere for you. He even called me. I asked him what he said to you. Lin Jia said, he claimed your wings have hardened now, that you found a sugar daddy. I asked, believe that? Lin Jia said, do I look that stupid? I believe that when pigs fly. I know you. I just laughed. Then Lin Jia said, oh right, Lin Yu. There's an industry training session next weekend. A 5-star hotel chef teaching plating techniques. You coming? I said I'd come. Life suddenly got packed. Up at 6 a.m. Make breakfast, take kid to school, help Sue with rehab. Squeeze in a grocery run at noon. Prep ingredients in the afternoon. Clean up. Handle Professor Sue's endless little requests. Make dinner in the evening. Help with homework. Put the kid to bed. Then organize the next day's work plan. Weekends are for industry training. Met a whole group of domestic service professionals there. Sister Lee is a veteran, 10 years in foreign service domestic work. Specializes in expats. English better than Chinese. Ms. Zhou is a connector in the high-end client circle. Often hosts private dinners. Calls me when short-staffed. One day after training, Sister Lee dragged me out for coffee. She said, Lin Yu, with your qualifications, why not strike out on your own? I said, on my own? She said, start a domestic service company. The demand for luxury domestic service is huge right now. Hotel management background, client connections, great English. You even know caregiving. A multi-talented person like you? You're a unicorn. Unmatched. You're wasting your talent being a nanny in someone else's house. No startup capital. Start with small gigs. Build your reputation. Take it slow. That night, I couldn't sleep. Lying in bed, I kept thinking about Sister Lee's words. Starting a company. 3 years ago, when I quit my job, I never even considered this as a possibility. Back then, Chunhao said he'd provide for me, and I just let myself be kept. Like a pet. Poured my entire being into that house. Thought if I just served his mother well, managed the home perfectly, I'd earn respect and gratitude. Now I know. Respect isn't begged, gratitude isn't bought. At 2 a.m. that night, I got up, opened my laptop, researched domestic service company registration. Next afternoon, Linwen showed up. Linwen is a major client Lin Jie introduced to me, the chairman of Serenity Homemakers. He's also Professor Su's son. He came to visit his mother and happened to see me giving Professor Su her therapy session. The old lady was in a rare good mood. She took my hand and said to Linwen, "Best caregiver ever. She really cares." She's sharp as a tack. Yesterday, we discussed German expressionism for hours. She knows Kandinsky. Linwen looked at me. His eyes widened. Lunch was specially prepared. I simply made 2 dishes and a soup. Linwen took a bite, put down his chopsticks, and said, "Mrs. Chun mentioned, you were a hotel manager before." I said, "Yes. The Intercontinental. 3 years." He asked, "Why did you leave?" I said, "Marriage. The family didn't allow me to work." He nodded. Didn't ask further. As he was leaving, he handed me a business card. Said, "If you're free next week, come by my office. There's a project I'd like to discuss with you." I took the card. Said okay. That night, Chunhao called again. He sounded exhausted. Said, "Lin Yu, my mom's in the hospital." I asked which one. He said, "Third People's Hospital, Orthopedics." I said, "I've seen the diagnosis. Mild lumbar sprain. No need for hospital." Long silence on the line. Then he said, "What will it take for you to come back?" I said, "I'm never coming back." He suddenly raised his voice. "Lin Yu, are you seeing someone else?" I said, "No." He said, "Then how can you just leave?" I said, "Chunhao, what have you given me in 5 years? When your mother berated me, you never said a word. When your sister bullied me, you looked the other way. When you slapped me, with over 20 relatives watching, no one defended me. You ask if I can leave? Let me ask you, when you hit me, could you bear to do it?" He didn't speak. I hung up. That night, I blocked Chunhao's number 2. A week later, I went to Lin Wen's company. The office was downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a city view. In the conference room, a projector displayed a PowerPoint. The title read, "Luxury Domestic Service Chain Brand Expansion Plan." Linwen got straight to the point. "Lin Yu, I've seen your resume. Bachelor's in Hospitality Management. 5-star hotel experience, TM, 8 English. Professional nursing knowledge. Someone like you is a rare find in this industry." He laid out this plan for me. Within 3 months, we'd launch a new, high-end domestic service company. The focus would be on academic-style home management. Every employee must have at least an associate's degree and professional certification. He said he wanted me to be the training director and handle some management. Base salary starting at $500K a year, plus $500K in performance bonuses. My fingers gripped the bag strapped tight. I said, "Mr. Lin, I need to think about it." He nodded. Said he could give me an answer next week. I stood up to leave. Got to the door, then turned back. I said, "Mr. Lin, what if I started my own company? Would you be willing to invest?" He looked at me, his eyes lit up. He said, "Tell me more." I laid out the business plan I'd been staying up nights writing. Targeting a high-end, membership-based service. Adapt VIP management from luxury hotels. Avoid low-end market. Only top-tier, bespoke service. I said I had no startup capital. You invest, I work. 50-50 split. He listened, then was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, $2 million. I take 30%. You get 51%. The remaining 19% is for the future core team. I said, "Deal." He smiled. "You've got guts." I said, "I've got nothing left to lose." Walking out of Lin Wen's office, the sun hurt my eyes at the entrance. Staring up for the longest time. 2 million. Just 2 weeks ago, I was a housewife thrown out by my husband. With only $800 in my pocket, someone invested 2 million for my company. That afternoon, I stood on the sidewalk for ages. People streamed past me. No one knew. what this woman in an old suit was thinking. I was thinking, Lin Yu, you're finally alive again. The days that followed felt like hitting the fast lane. Lin Wen's investment letter of intent came through. I had lawyerly review the contract. Lawyerly was a family law attorney Mrs. Chun recommended. In her 50s, sharp and to the point. Reading the contract, her brows furrowed into deep lines. She said this non-compete clause is a problem. Leave the company, banned from industry for 5 years. Cutting off escape. Negotiate? Yes. Terms are meant to be negotiated. I went back to Lin Wen. We went over the clauses one by one. He changed it to 3 years, limited to this city. Okay, 2-hour negotiation. Agreement reached. Lin Wen invests $2 million. Takes 25% equity. I get 51%. The team gets 24%. The non-compete is reduced to 2 years. It's only for competing luxury domestic service providers. The night we signed the letter of intent, Mrs. Chun suddenly knocked on my door. She stood in the doorway, handed me warm milk. Heard you're starting a company. I said yes, it's still in the planning stages. She said I want in an extra $500K for 10% equity. I was stunned for a second. She said I believe in this project, and I believe in you. The next evening, Ms. Zhou called me. Lin Yu, hosting a dinner for 20 next week. Can you do it? I said I could. She said, I have a friend in VC. He wants to meet you. Spent 3 days on the menu. From appetizers to dessert, 8 courses in total. Tested every single dish, practiced the plating over and over, until 1 a.m. If the knife work wasn't perfect, I'd start over. If sauce was off, I redid it. Day of event, not a single course went wrong for any of the 20 guests. That VC friend's last name was Zhao. After tasting my pan-seared foie gras, he asked, how much do you need? Nearly dropped my glass. I said, Mr. Zhao, you haven't even seen my business plan yet. He said the best business plan is the product itself. This foie gras tells me you understand what high standards are. That night, Mr. Zhao set up a detailed meeting for Monday. Back home, I couldn't sleep again. 3 a.m. I was at my desk revising the business plan, adding in his suggested smart home management concept, using tech to boost service quality and efficiency. Dawn was breaking outside. My eyes were burning, but my fingers kept typing. I must have fallen asleep at some point. When I woke up, my face was pressed against an A4 paper, leaving a red mark. I looked at the woman in the mirror, her hair a mess, but with a fire in her eyes. Suddenly, I smiled. Lin Yu, you finally look alive again. On Monday, Mr. Zhao and I signed an investment term sheet. $3 million for 15% equity, with a promise to bring in more resources. Combined with Lin Wen's $2 million and Mrs. Chen's $500K. That's $5.5 million in seed funding. Our company valuation shot up to $20 million overnight. Lin Wen said on the phone, you've got some serious luck. I said, it's not luck. It's the foundation I built up before. He chuckled and said, yeah, you used every skill from your hotel years. I'd already decided on the company name. Serenity Homemakers. A nod to Lin Wen's Serenity chain. And a promise to myself. Serenity for the clients. Serenity for the employees. Serenity for me. The office is in a downtown high-rise Lin Wen recommended. 80 square meters, rent-free until year-end. On moving day, Sisterly brought a few old colleagues to help. We were chatting while wiping desks, and at a high point, Sisterly raised her voice and said, Lin Yu, you finally made it out of the trenches. Our industry needs a boss who really knows the ropes like you. Don't call me boss, just use my name. No way. I brought you in. Your success reflects on me too. Right then, old Zhang, the security guard, called. His voice was hushed. Director Lin, a group is making a scene downstairs, holding signs. Says they're your in-laws. I walked to the window and looked down. A small crowd had gathered at the main entrance. Shen Hao held a sign. My mother-in-law was in a wheelchair. Shen Min had a megaphone and was yelling up at the building. The sign had big characters. Heartless wife abandons family. My fingers tightened around my phone. Then I said, follow the contingency plan. Call the police. Old Zhang said, got it. I stood by the window, watching the security guards go over to talk to them. Watching Chen Hao gesticulate wildly, getting more and more agitated. Watching Chen Min raise the megaphone even higher. Sisterly came up behind me. Should we go down? I said no. 20 minutes later, a police car arrived. As Chen Hao was being persuaded to leave, he looked up at the building for a long time. I don't know if he saw me. From over a dozen floors up, all I could see was a blurry figure standing there. Like a post, Attorney Lee messaged me saying, "The court has accepted the divorce petition. The hearing is in a week." He said Chun Hao hit the roof when he got the summons, swearing he'd make you pay. He said, "Don't worry. His behavior will only make the judge more sympathetic." I said, "I know." On the day of the hearing, I wore that new white power suit, bought last month. Sharp tailoring, crisp fabric. Wearing it, I felt like a whole new person. Attorney Lee was waiting for me at the entrance. He said Chun Hao brought his mother and sister. I said I figured. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. The wooden benches smelled faintly of varnish. Chun Hao sat in the defendant's seat, in a wrinkled suit. He'd lost a lot of weight, his cheeks sunken, dark circles under his eyes. His mother sat in a wheelchair. Chun Min stood beside him. When she saw me walk in, she shot me a vicious, hateful glare. The judge was a woman in her 50s, her voice steady. Attorney Lee presented the grounds for divorce, domestic violence, irretrievable marriage breakdown. He submitted the injury report, testimony from the neighborhood security guard, and the threatening text messages Chun Hao sent. Chun Hao suddenly stands up, his voice cracking. He says, "I was drunk that day. I didn't mean it. We've always had a good relationship." I look at him. This man once knelt in the pouring rain to propose to me. Said he wanted to be the reason I came home. Now he's standing in court saying he can't let me go. But his eyes are filled with nothing but resentment and spite. The judge asks him, "Mr. Wong, did you lay hands on her?" He says, "Once, but only because my mom fell." I panicked. The judge says, "Your wife has a medical report. Soft tissue contusions, facial swelling." He calls it an accident. The judge looks at me. "Ms. Zhang, your statement?" I take a deep breath. "Your Honor, this marriage has been dead in all but name. Chun Hao didn't just hit me. He subjected me to long-term psychological control and verbal abuse. I request a divorce decree." Chun Hao stands up again. "Lin Yue, I know I was wrong," he pleads. "Mom's in a home now. Lily moved out. I'm all alone in the house. I look at your picture every day." Judge bangs gavel, orders control. His lawyer pushes for a 6-month cooling-off period. My lawyer, Lee, insists on immediate divorce. The judge finally declares mediation failed. Adjourned for 2 weeks. Leaving the courthouse, Chun Hao catches up to me. He grabs my arm. "Lin Yue, we need to talk." My lawyer, Lee, steps in front of me. The restraining order is in effect. "Keep your distance." Chun Min shrieks from a distance, calling me heartless. "Lin Yue, you ungrateful bitch. My brother cared for you 5 years. This is your repayment." I don't look back. That afternoon, I'm back at the office. The company registration has been approved. The business license says, "Legal representative, Lin Yue." I stare at those words for a long time. Workers from the contractor are taking measurements. They ask if I want a green wall behind the reception. I say yes, in a light sage green. Zhao Rui shows up for her first day. Mr. Zhao's daughter. Fresh from UK hospitality studies, ponytail. Fluent English. Her eyes light up when she sees me. "Boss Lin, I'm here for my internship. My dad says I'll learn the real deal working with you." I say, "Don't call me Boss Lin. Call me Lin Jia." She immediately switches. "Lin Jia, what should I work on today?" Told him to read the service manual first. Starting tomorrow, he'll shadow Li Jia on client visits. He said okay. 8 p.m., and I was the only one left in the office. The city lights outside the window were blazing like a sea of stars. I spun around once in my new office chair. Comfy chair, good back support. My phone rang. It was a call from the nursing home. The nurse said, "Ms. Lin, your mother-in-law insists on seeing you. Says it's urgent." I hesitated, but I went anyway. Inside the nursing home, she was propped up in bed. When she saw me come in, a flicker of light appeared in her cloudy eyes. She reached out a hand. "Lin, you came." I stood in the doorway, not moving closer. She said, "How Dong did wrong, but you're still husband and wife. Can't you just forgive him this once?" I said, "We've already started legal proceedings." Suddenly, she got agitated. "That idiot lost his job. He must sell the house. Will you hound him to his grave?" I said, "He hounded me first." She was silent for a long time. She whispered, "It's my fault. I always found fault with you." "But how Dong?" She stopped. I said, "What about him?" She looked at me, her eyes darting away. "It's nothing." I said, "He was married before, wasn't he?" Her face went pale. "How did you know?" I guessed. Finally, she admitted it. Chun Hao had a brief marriage when he was 26. He divorced because of domestic violence, too. That woman took the money and vanished. Didn't leave a word. She said, Hao Dong took it very hard. He only started to get better after he met you. She said, Lin Yu, he really does love you. He just has a quick temper. Can't you be understanding? I listened as she finished. Then I said, Mom, when he was hitting me, who was understanding for me? She had nothing to say. I walked out. A nurse chased me, apologizing. Ms. Lin, sorry. We shouldn't have gone along with her act. I said it's fine. I handed her one of my business cards. My company launches next month. Professional senior care. Feel free to consult us if needed. As for the day of the hearing, what she said that day, I rarely think about it now. Not trying to forget, just too busy to dwell on it. The day of the company launch, a lot of people came. Mr. Lin Wan, Mrs. Chun, Professor Su, Ms. Zhou, Mr. Zhao, Attorney Li, and I specifically invited Lin Jie. The reporters had their cameras and long lenses set up. Bright flashbulbs. I could barely see. I stood on stage, looking at the sea of faces below, my palms completely sweaty. Lin Wan gave the opening speech. He said Serenity Homemakers was the most promising project he'd ever invested in, because the founder was the most professional talent he'd ever seen. Mrs. Chun actually said a few more words. My family's elder hasn't yelled away any caregiver in 5 years, except Lin Yu. I'm investing in her because she's worth it. When it was my turn, I cleared my throat. Thank you for witnessing Serenity Homemaker's birth. Just as I was speaking, a commotion erupted at the door. Chun Hao's voice cut through the entire hall. He yelled, Lin Yu, you ungrateful B***TCH. Look, the woman who abandoned her family started this company. Reporters swung cameras. I stood on stage, watching security try to hold him back, watching my mother-in-law wailing hysterically in her wheelchair, watching Chun Ming holding up his phone, filming me. I walked down from the stage, step by step, toward the entrance. Seeing me, Chun Hao got even more agitated. So high and mighty now, after eating and living off my family? Did you get the restraining order? He paused. I said, the court order clearly states you are not to harass me. Leave now and I won't press charges. He sneered. Who the hell do you think you are? You think you're special with this shell company? I looked at him and suddenly felt very calm. I said, Chun Hao, that night you hit me, did you ever imagine it would come to this? He stayed silent. I said, you've lost your job now. You sold a house. Mom's in a home. Your sister's divorced. Who do you blame? He glared, eyes red. You did this. I said, you chose this. The police arrived. They verified the order and escorted him out. I returned to the stage. I picked up the mic. My apologies for the interruption. In fact, it was that failed marriage that made me realize how undervalued so many women's home contributions are. Serenity Homemakers ensures professional domestic labor receives the respect and value it deserves. Applause broke out. Loud. I stood there, smiling for the cameras, just like I practiced countless times. During the ribbon cutting, as the streamers fell, my hand holding the scissors was steady. Serenity Homemakers Service Company, Ltd. In its first month, my company's revenue was $820,000. We signed 47 clients, including 3 executives from listed companies, 2 foreign consuls, and a retired professor referred by Professor Su. The media started writing about me. The headlines varied. Domestic violence victim launches luxury domestic firm in 3 months. Kicked out by husband. She now earns $30K as nanny turned CEO. From abused wife to boss lady. The headline that hit me the hardest was short, just 8 words. She is no longer someone's wife. I had my assistant print that headline out, pinned it on the cubicle divider. Every morning when I get to work, I see him first, then I see the skyline outside the window, the city growing more prosperous by the day. By the end of August, we moved to a new office. From 80 square meters to 240. The team grew from 5 people to 28. Lin Wen added another $2 million in investment. Mr. Zhao introduced a new VC. Zhao Rui was officially hired, no longer an intern. Ops specialist Li Jie, now training supervisor. She trains new hires on plating, etiquette, and first aid basics. I insist on teaching 2 courses myself. One on luxury service etiquette, the other on crisis management. I share my story in class. It's more than skills. It's psychology. The families you'll serve in the future might have all sorts of problems you can't see. Be professional, but have empathy too. Sometimes, as I'm talking, I see trainees in the audience with tears in their eyes. I don't know what they're crying about. Maybe they remember a moment of their own. Mid-September, Professor Sue suddenly collapsed and was hospitalized. I went to visit. In the hospital corridor, I ran into someone head-on. Chunhao. He was standing by the ward door, a fruit basket in his hand, clearly there to visit a colleague's family. Our eyes met. He lost a lot of weight. There were streaks of gray at his temples. I gave him a slight nod and started to walk past. He said, Linue. I stopped. He said, I heard your company is doing really well. Congratulations. 5 years of marriage. He never once said congratulations to me. I said, thank you. He said, I hope you're doing well. I didn't answer. I walked past him, out of the hospital. The sunlight was blinding. I stood at the entrance, looking up. My phone buzzed. A message from Zhaorui. Lingjia, the 5-star hotel manager for our interview, is here. When will you be back? I said 20 minutes. As I got in the car, I glanced in the rearview mirror at the hospital building. That thin figure at the entrance grew smaller until it disappeared around the corner. When Serenity Homemakers was 6 months old, we held our first all-staff meeting. The conference room was packed. 47 people, from cleaners to house managers, from caregivers to banquet chefs. Everyone wore the navy blue uniform, the Serenity emblem on my chest. I stood on stage. The company's 6-month report on the screen behind me. Revenue surpassed 5 million. 137 client families under contract. 91% retention rate. Linwen sits in the front row, crossing her legs with a smirk on her face. Mrs. Chun made a rare appearance at an informal event, still looking aloof as ever. But I noticed. He brought me a bouquet of flowers, placed by the podium. Professor Su sits in his wheelchair, silver hair meticulously combed. He's today's special guest speaker, lecturing staff on high-end client psychology. I talked about 3 things. The first was about standards. We uphold the highest standards in the industry, not because we're better than anyone else, but because only by setting the bar sky high can we ensure that people who were once underestimated at home, just like I was, compensation and dignity. Domestic service is professional. Respect us not because we're beneath them, but because we're professionals. If you're ever mistreated anywhere, the company has your back. The third was about the past. My past, you all know it. Domestic violence, thrown out on the street. Penniless but proud. Every single person standing here today, no matter what you did before, no matter where you came from the moment you put on this uniform, a professional at Serenity Homemakers. After the meeting, Li Jie came to me with red-rimmed eyes, saying, Linyu, what you just said? It made me want to cry. I told her, don't cry. We should laugh, she said, smiling through tears. No time for tears. I wiped the business license hanging on the wall and looked over the employee honor board again. The city lights blazed brightly outside the window, just like that rainy night a year ago. But this time, the person standing by the window was no longer Lin Yu with nowhere to go. It was Lin, the founder of Serenity Homemakers. My phone rang. It was a message from Lawyer Lee. He said Chunhao's company had filed for bankruptcy liquidation, for $1 million in debt, house foreclosed. His mother was taken out of the nursing home. Mother and son rent on the outskirts. He said Chimin also got divorced last month. She took the kids and moved back in with her parents. 3 of them crammed into a 60-square-meter rental. He said, Lin Yu, do you even want to know all this? I stared at that message for a long time. Then I replied, thank you. No need to send any more. I put the phone down on the desk. Back to planning next week's training. I went back to the neighborhood I'd lived in for 5 years. Not for nostalgia, just passing through. The driver took that street. Waiting at the red light, I turned and saw the familiar gate. Old Zhang, the security guard, stood by the booth, giving directions to a taxi. He's aged a bit, more gray in his hair. I rolled down the window, called out, Mr. Zhang. He turned, stared at me for a few seconds, suddenly broke into a smile. Mrs. Wang. No, should be CEO Lin now. I said, just Lin Yu is fine. He said, you look radiant. Much better than last year. Half your face swollen. I asked what happened. You said you fell. I didn't dare press. I said, it really was a fall back then. He smiled, didn't push it. He grew smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror, just like that rainy night a year ago. But this time, the window was rolled up. The car was warm. November. Serenity Homemakers. Shortlisted for the city's service awards. The Best Emerging Enterprise Award. On awards night, I stood on the stage in a burgundy evening gown, holding the crystal trophy, spotlights blinding me. Thunderous applause from below. I spotted Linwen, Mrs. Chun, Professor Su, Mr. Zhao, Ms. Zhou sisterly, Zhao Rui, and so many employees I knew by name. And some I didn't. They were all clapping, all smiling. Suddenly, I remember that night 5 years ago. I wore a burgundy evening gown then too. Stood on the company annual gala stage, holding the Manager of the Year trophy. Back then, I thought I had the whole world. Later, for a man's promise of I'll take care of you, I packed that trophy into a storage box, pushed that gown to the very bottom of the closet. Now I'm standing here again. The trophy is new. The gown is new too. 5 years. Linyu is still Linyu. She just finally learned not to sell herself at a discount. For anyone's promise. After the ceremony, I was changing in the lounge. My phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. I opened it. Linyu, happy birthday. Just 6 words. I glanced at the date. Today is November 12th. My birthday. I stared at the screen for a long time. Don't know the number. But I can guess who sent it. I didn't reply. Put the phone in my bag, zipped it up, walked out. Zhao Rui was waiting by the door. Said, Sisterling, everyone's going to celebrate. You coming? I said, I'm in. That night, we booked out a whole Japanese restaurant, got wasted on sake, talked a lot of nonsense. Li Jie was plastered. She threw an arm around my shoulder and said, you have no idea. A year ago, Linyu, Shunhao called me screaming. Said I'd stolen you away. I wanted to curse him out right then. But I was scared of causing you more trouble. It ate me up inside. I said, you can curse him now. She said, not worth it anymore. Linwen was actually tipsy for once. Leaning back on the tatami, squinting at me. You know, you're stubborn. The contract's non-compete? I set a trap. And you actually brought a lawyer to pick it apart, line by line. I said it was necessary. He said he's invested in many startups. You're the only founder who ever made me change the terms. I asked, so will you set traps next time? He smiled. No point. You just climb right out. Everyone laughed. 1 a.m. I hailed a cab home. The driver was a young woman. Soft music playing. She asked, working late? I said no. Company celebration. She went, wow. You're the boss. Something like that. That's so cool. I want to be a boss. I watched the neon lights streak by. Said you will. At my apartment building, I swiped in. Elevator stopped on 17. I fished out my keys, opened the door. The sensor light in the foyer flicked on. The place isn't big. 60 square meters. Bought with the divorce money, plus my first company bonus. Outside the living room window, just the ordinary city view. No swimming pool like in the luxury gated communities. No grand piano like at Mrs. Chen's place. No skyline view like from Lin Wen's office. But it's my place. The lock reads my fingerprint. My favorite fruits are in the fridge. On the bookshelf. The professional books I salvaged from my old life. New bed, 2 pillows. But I'm the only one sleeping in it. It's enough. On weekends, I visited Professor Su at the home. He moved out of Mrs. Chen's place last month. Said he didn't want to be a burden to his daughter. The home is fine. More people, more lively. I knew it was an excuse. He just didn't want Mrs. Chun feeling guilty. But his spirits are good. His eyes lit up when he saw me. Linyu, you're here. Did you bring the Kandinsky art book I asked about? I did. I borrowed it from the library. He took it. Put on his reading glasses, turning the pages slowly, one by one. Stopped at one page. He looked up suddenly. Linyu, do you hate them? Who? Your ex-husband. Your ex-mother-in-law. I was quiet for a moment. I used to. Not anymore. He looked at me over the rim of his glasses. Why? I said, hating takes energy. I need all my energy for other things now. He nodded. Smart, huh? It was 3 p.m. when I left the nursing home. Driving back to the office, passing the city outskirts, I saw a familiar figure by the roadside. My ex-mother-in-law. At old complex entrance with cart. It had a few greens inside. She'd aged so much. Hair completely white, back hunched. I slowed down. Drove past her. She didn't recognize this car. In the rearview mirror, her figure got smaller and smaller, finally turned into a tiny black dot. I pressed the gas, merged onto the main road. Early February, Serenity Homemakers signed its 199th annual client, a tech bro introduced by Mrs. Zhou. He wanted a private dinner party for 20 over the Spring Festival, specifically requested me to personally design the menu. I refused. I'm management now, no service gigs. The client wasn't happy, said he came because of my reputation, just wanted to taste the founder's cooking. Zhao Rui whispered beside me, Linjia, make an exception? Rules are rules. In the end, I went to meet the client myself, talked menu design for 20 minutes, then dispatched our most senior banquet chef for the on-site service. After the meal, the client messaged saying he was extremely satisfied, would renew next year. Zhao Rui said, Linjia, not about holding ground. It's about knowing your place. March 8th, Women's Day. The City Women's Federation invited me to give a talk. The theme was women's entrepreneurship and self-growth. Over 100 women in the audience from all walks of life. The youngest in their early 20s, the oldest with graying hair. When the host introduced me, she said, Ms. Lin is the epitome of a housewife. I took the mic, comeback entrepreneur. I don't like the word comeback. The room fell silent. I said comeback. Makes it sound like someone clawing their way up from the bottom. But I never felt I was beneath anyone. Those years as a housewife, I worked 16 hours a day. No days off. No salary. No social security. I took care of the whole family's every need. That labor didn't become cheap just because it was done at home. I said, I simply moved to a different place to apply my professional skills. And this place pays me. The applause lasted a long time. After the talk, a young woman was waiting for me by the door. Eyes red, she said, Ms. Lin, I heard your story. I've decided to get a divorce. I looked at her, late 20s, bruise under eye. Need a lawyer? I know a good one. She shook her head and said, I just wanted to thank you in person. I said, don't thank me. Thank yourself. When I got home that night, I opened the fridge. Found the lemons I bought last month had already gone bad. I can never finish so much by myself. Always thinking I'll make desserts when I buy them. But then, who do I share them with when they're done? I tossed the rotten lemons into the trash. Peeled the note off the fridge. The note was from Zhao Rui. It said, Lin, the industry summit is next week. Your schedule's set. Hotel confirmation is on your desk. I held that note in my hand. Stood at the fridge for ages, then checked my phone. Texted Zhao Rui. Leave a few days free after the summit. I'm thinking France. She replied instantly. Le Cordon Bleu? Yeah, going back to see the school. She sent a string of excited emojis. Said amazing. Lin, I'll book your flight. Paris in April. The air was crisp. I stood outside the gates of Le Cordon Bleu. Took a picture. Didn't post it. Just saved on my phone. Back when I studied here, I was still the FB director at the Grand Intercontinental. Up at 5 a.m. every day, catching the first subway to class. Home at night, practicing knife skills and plating from the lectures. Shenhao hadn't entered the picture yet. Back then, I thought my life would just keep going like that. Doing work I loved. Going places I wanted. Becoming the person I wanted to be. Then love came along. I made it my whole world. Packed my own dreams away in a box. Now I've taken those dreams back out. They didn't rot. Just a little dusty. Wiped them off, and they're good as new. The day I flew back, the plane landed. I turned on my phone. Texts flooded in. Mostly work stuff. One was from an unknown number. Linua's mom is gone. Just 5 words. I stared at the screen. Put the phone on my lap. The runway outside sped backwards as the plane taxied. The passenger next to me was asleep, snoring softly. I didn't reply to that text. Went home, took a shower. Changed clothes. Drove to the office. Zhao Rui was pulling a late night. She looked up, surprised to see me. Said, Lin, you weren't supposed to be back until tomorrow? I said, came back early. She glanced at my face, didn't ask. Just put a stack of papers needing my signature on the desk. I opened the first page. It was the training plan for next quarter. The sunset outside dyed the office in gold. I picked up my pen. I signed my name, Lin Yu, on the first page. The same 2 characters I wrote on our marriage certificate 5 years ago. But this time, the pen strokes were steady. My phone buzzed again inside the package. I didn't look up. The city outside was lighting up one by one. Like countless others who've journeyed through the dark. They're still shining, and so am I.